And happy Tuesday. Going live. We're going to do something a little different today. I got some videos I want to show you and talk about, and want to answer a few questions that I've gotten in some comments recently. And yeah, it's going to be something if it works out, I'm going to try to do this regularly. I'm going to try to do this every week where we dissect a few videos together and then I answer any questions that I've gotten. Sometimes it's too much to try to type everything out in the comments when you're literally communicating with hundreds of people, mostly negative comments. To be honest, it's not like I'm so popular. People are have been fairly unkind, but I'm not here to play victim. I knew what I was signing up for when God told me to talk about this. So hey, before we get into it though, do me a favor, drop a comment, say hello. Feel free to share this. We're going to be talking about the dating mess mostly that we're in, the shit show of a dating culture that we are living through. We're going to be talking a little bit about polygyny. I'm going to share some of my story and why I've picked this topic, or I didn't even choose it myself, but why I feel like this is a hill worth dying on. And yeah, so do me a favor, drop a comment and we'll get into it. So looks like we got a couple people on here. David Wolf. I don't know who else is here. Just check. Just want to check YouTube and see if it's there as well. Yes, it is. Okay, good. All righty. Good. Cool. Let's dive into it. So I guess the first place I'd like to start is that somebody asked me the other day, they're like, why are you talking so much about this? On my last vlog that I did, I just talked about how my life would have been so much different had I known this sooner. And they're like, what do you mean by that? One woman had read my book recently, Why Waiting Works. And she's like, what do you mean by that? It seems like you were living a really purpose-filled life. And I don't know if she said that you were content with your singleness and your abstinence. I've done my best to be content with single and abstinent, but it's not been easy. Man was not created to be alone. The Bible says that, that was the first thing that wasn't good, is that when man was alone, God said everything was good. He created the world, all the animals, everything was good. He said, and said it was good. But when he saw that man was alone, he said that it's not good for man to be alone. And I don't believe that it was natural for a man, unless he was given the gift of singleness, which I wasn't, to be single that long and sex free. I don't think that that's what the purpose of, I don't think that God wanted that for me, or I don't think he wants it for any person, for any human being, man or woman. We're supposed to have companionship, but living under monogamy only, because I was, okay, so I want you to understand something. I never wanted to be divorced, so I was not going to settle. Okay. But I equally, with just as much force, or if you want to call it that, with just as much determination, I was equally committed to not having sex before marriage. The reason I mention that is because let's just say I don't want to be divorced and I don't want to settle. Fine. If I wasn't committed to having sex before marriage, I would just go out and fornicate. That's what most people do. That's what most men do. They just go out and they're like, well, you're good enough for now. And they sleep with whoever's, showing them some interest and whoever's there. I could have done that a lot, but and to be honest, I didn't even do it necessarily because I'm so morally superior. I did it because I had that video go viral, 10 Reasons Not to Have Sex Before Marriage. And then I wrote the book, Why Waiting Works. And now I was hemmed in. Now I was like, I can't mess up. So I didn't want to look like a hypocrite and, lose the platform, the entire thing that I built. But I also didn't want to be divorced. So I sat in the middle of this really uncomfortable situation, these two opposing forces, and at times I just suffered through it. I burned, with loneliness and lust and sometimes depression, and I had a couple slip ups, because I still had a sex drive. I mean, that 18 of 23 years without having sex, outside of two mistakes in 18 years. First 6 years straight, I haven't had sex in like 5 years, for anybody that's asking. So like, I love these people in my comments right now that are shitting on me, and they're out fornicating. I know they say, well, I'm in a committed relationship. I'm like, it's still fornication. Just because you got a boyfriend. What are we, in high school? You got a boyfriend? Get a husband, get a wife. Like, you're still sinning. I hope you know that. And if you believe what the Bible says, I'm not saying it's true, necessarily. Maybe it's not literal, But it says, fornicators or sexually immoral don't inherit the kingdom of God. So that's a serious sin. Now people are like acting like polygyny is this thing from the pit of hell, and it was never in the Bible. It's not in there. You think about it, like all the time, all those thousands of years, all the greats, all the patriarchs that did this, and never once did God speak about it negatively. Not only did he not condemn it or forbid it, he didn't even say anything negative about it. Like he could have been like, "Yo, Moses, what's up?" Or David, like why'd you need to take all these wives? Or Solomon, 1,000 wives, right? Like I think he personally overdid it. Maybe he did sin because he did multiply wives. He hoarded. But his sin that pulled him away from God wasn't polygyny. It was that his heart wasn't fully devoted to God. And yeah, he shouldn't have married women that were outside of the faith. But in all honesty, because he was a king, there was probably strategic purposes that he did that. Anyway, I don't want to go down that path. But like to go back to the original question, what do you mean by that? How would your life have been different? I would have been married a long time ago. I would have been married a long time ago. I probably would have been married within a year or two of becoming a Christian, because I wouldn't have felt like, one and only. Like I had to wait for this one magical unicorn to come along that was going to make me fall in love, that was going to be so romantic, and to forsake all others when it's not in the Bible. Monogamy, the word isn't even in the Bible. People like to go back to the Edenic ideal of saying Adam and Eve, but I'm like, Moses wrote that and he didn't even believe it. He didn't even believe that was the ideal for all time because he didn't practice it. So how my life would have been different had I known that monogamy only, and let me just clarify, there's nothing wrong with monogamy. I think it's great. I think it's what the majority of people will practice. It's the idea of monogamy only that's not biblical. And that's what creates a lot of the problems that we see. And we can talk about some of those things. We will talk about some of those things today and how polygyny could solve those just using common sense. I don't want to say forget the Bible, because for me, everything goes back to that. Like I would never do anything that I thought was sin, intentionally at least. But just using common sense. Like when we start talking about the marriage rates being at historic lows, the men are just not willing to get married anymore because they feel like monogamy only is a trap, so they don't do it, and they fornicate, at least if they can. And you got one in three children being raised in fatherless homes. Would polygyny give more of these kids fathers? Of course they would, because it would create more husbands. So like, I think we have to go back a little bit to the heart of God, and we have to look at like, people are trying to find something in the letter of the law when it's not even there, first off, but also just completely disregarding the heart of God. Like God wants to find protection, covering for widows and orphans, and that's his heart, like, because if it was just about sex, like so many people have claimed, that's what's happening now without polygyny. So anyway, yeah, that's how my life would have been different. I'd be married. I'd probably have kids in junior high school at this point. Like I know how hard it was to go through what I went through, where I was white knuckling it at times. And I just don't believe that any man in my position would do that if they didn't have a book. That was really what kept me out of trouble, was a book. So they would just go fornicate. That's exactly what they would do. Or maybe if they weren't really true to themselves, because I'm pretty true to myself. Like I don't deceive myself. Like I could have been like, you know what, I am in love with this one, just to fulfill the loneliness, just to get rid of the loneliness that I was feeling, and just married one. Right? That's what people told me. Just pick one. Just settle. Like you're too picky. I've heard that a million times in the comments. And I could have done that and ended up one of the 56% of the people that got divorced. I don't even know if anybody in the comments that has been really vocal about going against this are not divorced. I think just about everybody in there is a product of a divorce. And look, what I'm saying is I don't think that a 56% divorce rate is God's ideal. I don't. I think there's a problem with the setup, with the model. And we're going to talk about that today. So I'm going to pull up a video here. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to watch this one. This is called Women Are Making Men Polygynous. This is one I came across on YouTube. And women are making society polygamous. Here we go.
The Psych Hacks, Better Living Through Psychology. I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is Psych Hacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is Women Are Making Society Polygamous. Now, this is obviously a very provocative title, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't true. And I hope to back it up with some evidence and arguments in this episode. I will say at the outset that I don't think this movement is intentional. That is, I don't think that women are consciously attempting to accomplish this purpose. This is an epiphenomenon that emerges out of the data en masse, kind of like how a wave emerges out of the movements of individual particles, none of which are particularly wave-like. None of the molecules has any awareness that it is contributing to the wave, but the wave arises out of the molecules nonetheless. This is the mystery happening.
Hey, Jeff Bridges here. The Big Lebowski. That's got to be one of
why women are making society polygamous. You have to first understand that women today are absolutely crushing it. While there was a gender gap that clearly favored men 50 years ago, we now have a gender gap that clearly favors women. And in many domains, the size of this gender gap is larger than the size of the gender gap that we had a half century ago. Probably for the first time in human history, in most Western societies, childless women under 30 are earning more than childless men under 30. Women are graduating from high school, from college, from growth. So what is?
Okay, I'm going to pause it there for a second. Where are we at? Okay. So basically what he said is that women are making more money than they've ever made before. They're getting better educated than they've ever been before. I just heard recently that 60%, or maybe it was even higher than that, of all college graduates are women. So it's not a bad thing. But there's an unintended consequence with that. And this is what he's going to talk about next.
The unintended consequence. In order to understand it, you first have to appreciate that women tend to date hypergamously. For those of you who have never heard this term before, hypergamy is the tendency to date across and up status hierarchies. To put it simply, women want a man who is at least as good as her, if not better. And better, of course, is how women choose to define it, because it's for the cat to decide which milk is good. However, with respect to some very obvious metrics, women tend to marry men who are older, taller, stronger, higher status, and higher earning. And here's the rub. If women are outperforming most men, and women continue to date hypergamously, then voila. You have an increasingly shrinking pool of men that the majority of women would even consider as candidates for dating.
Boom. Did y'all hear that? So because women are making more money and getting better educated, that shrinks the amount of men that they're willing to date, because they only want to date guys that are generally, not always, but generally above them, have a higher social status, make more money, better educated. Very rarely does a woman want to date a man that makes less money than her or isn't as educated as her. And to be honest, men don't want to date women typically that make more money than them or are better educated, because they feel emasculated. But so men will actually date down, but women want to date up. And because women are doing so much better, that shrinks the amount of men that there are for them to choose from. Okay, let's keep going.
And mating. And that's bad for women, because fewer eligible men significantly increases the intra-sex competition for a dwindling pool of potential mates. And it's also bad for most men, because most men are just flat out being disqualified from the sexual marketplace. On the other hand, if you are a top 10% man, a top 5% man, wow, is it a time to be alive? And why is that? Because all of these beautiful, high-achieving, intelligent, successful women are competing for you, one of a smaller and smaller subset of men.
Boom. Okay, so let's break it down. What he said was the majority of men are pushed out of the sexual marketplace because of this hypergamy. Because since the sexual revolution, there's no stigma around having sex before marriage. So what women will do is they'll give out the sex to a man that they have no chance of getting the commitment from, that are way above them. They're like their social status, the amount of money they make, what that man is looking for, they are so far from. But the men, because we're not hypergamous, we will fuck them. We'll sleep with them, but they have no chance of getting the commitment. They don't know that. They think they actually have a chance of getting the commitment. And what that does is, because they're equal now, they're real equal in the sexual marketplace, they don't consider that person. And that is their true equal. But they don't know it. They think that they're more valuable than they are, just because a man that's a higher status than their equal will actually sleep with them, when that's not the case. Does that make sense? I'll give you an example. There was a girl that was coming around City Femme for a while. I'm not going to mention her name, but I knew she liked me. It was obvious. I could tell. She was trying to get close to me. She's not someone that I would ever have considered, not on any level, that as far as the way she looked, the way her life was set up, a variety of things about her personality I didn't necessarily care for. From a romantic standpoint, a dating relationship. Now, I'll be honest, there were times where I was at a City Fam event or maybe another event, and I'm leaving and I'm lonely. I don't want to go home alone. I had a drink or two. I wanted to fuck, to be honest, I'm a man. Men want to fuck. And I wanted to sometimes, but also I don't want to sin. So I didn't go home with her, but knowing that I probably could have. Now, what happened was, when she first came in the group, there was a man that was hanging around that was interested in her. And she told me, such and such likes me, but I don't really think of him that way. And here, meanwhile, she's looking at me with like hearts in her eyes, trying to get close to me. And I have zero interest. However, if I wasn't as committed to waiting as I really was, and I give the book a lot of credit, not because I'm such a great person, I do try to be obedient to God, but I know a lot of male Christians that are out having sex, and it's very common in the church. I would probably be one of them if it wasn't for the platform, to be honest. But if I hadn't been so committed to waiting, I would have taken her out of there and I would have fucked her one or two, some of those nights. Not because I wanted to give her a relationship, just because I didn't want to be alone, or maybe just because I wanted to, because I was horny. And what would that have done for her? That would have taken her off. Very rarely does a woman go out and sleep with multiple men at the same time. Usually they're having sex with one man. Men, however, those top men that this guy just talked about, they are not having sex with one woman at a time. They're having sex with multiple women at the same time. So what happened was, because I didn't sleep with this girl, what ended up happening after a period of time, she eventually started looking at this guy that was interested in her all along, that she wasn't considering because she was trying to get with me. And she ended up getting married to him. And now they're great. And they have a big, happy family. But guess what? If most men don't do what I did, they do fuck them. They do take them home because they're selfish. Deep down, at the heart of man, I believe that we're all selfish and we're sinful. And they take those women off the market, and they never get to see who their true equals are and link up with the right person that they could build a successful family, a marriage with. Like, here's another video. Actually, let's finish this one. I want to show you another one that kind of illustrates my point a little bit better.
And the men at the top of these status hierarchies are just having a lot of sex with a lot of different women. And this phenomenon is accelerating at a fantastic rate.
On Christmas Day, we were in the hospital. It was her first Christmas. It was our first Christmas being parents.
In the last 10 years, the number of
Sorry about the commercials, guys. Bear with it.
sexual partners that the average man has had has remained the same. However, over that time, according to the General Social Survey, the number of men under 30 who had no sex in the past 10 years, in the past year, has tripled from 10% to nearly 30%. This means that one in three young men have absolutely zero presence in the sexual marketplace.
Did y'all hear that? Okay. 1 in 3 men right now under 30 years old are not even competing for women. They're not even in the sexual marketplace. This is why pornography addiction is so bad. because men still have sexual appetite. They still have sexual energy that they're trying to release or express. Not to say it's right. I believe your body takes care of itself if you don't bust long enough. But they're not even competing. They're not even, and this is why, if you look at male promiscuity versus female promiscuity, the reason that female promiscuity is so much more disgusting is because any woman can be promiscuous. Any woman can go out and sleep with 10 new men every single day, but not every man can be promiscuous. Only a small percentage of men. It doesn't say anything about a woman that she's promiscuous, except the fact that she doesn't have a lot of self-worth. A man, now you could say that for a man too, but that man probably had to achieve some level of status in order to be promiscuous. He either had to make a lot of money, or he has to be extremely good looking, or maybe famous, or something, some power. He had to do something in order to be able to do that. So people try to say, "Oh, well, I don't want a guy that's been promiscuous either." Look, you have that right, but don't try to say it's the same thing, because every single woman in the world can be promiscuous. All she has to do is lack discretion. So what do we do about this now? Because again, 30% of the men, 1 in 3 men under the age of 30, aren't even in the sexual marketplace. So if you look at my videos, and what I say is, I say women need to stop giving it out. Why do I say that? I could try to appeal to the men. I could try to go to the men and say, guys, stop trying to have sex with girls. How far do you think that's going to get? Seriously, you think it's going to get very far? I don't. I mean, but I have tried that. And I've even tried to model it in my own life to say, look, this is how I'm living. And I'm public about it. I create content. I'm surrounded by beautiful girls. Guys, look, I'm not touching them, making content around it. That's even harder than just trying to tell them to do it. You actually have to live it out. But going to the source of the supply chain, like anytime you want to stop something, you got to go to the source, and you got to stop the supply of it. Right? Like imagine, people are talking about fentanyl pouring through our borders. Yeah, we need to stop that. Now could we just go around to everybody that uses drugs and say, hey guys, I know there's a lot of fentanyl, there's a lot of drugs around, just don't use it. No, how about we just stop the drugs from coming in, right? Like that's what I'm doing by appealing to women, is I'm saying, look, ladies, smarten up. You want to be married, this isn't the way to get it, So in addition to, well, let me just leave it at that. So that's why I believe that there's a huge difference between male and female promiscuity, is because, again, 30% of the men under the age of 30 can't even have sex with one girl, much less be promiscuous. They can't even get one. 1 in 3. It's crazy.
Place. On the other hand, only roughly 1 in 6 women in that age group reported the same thing. This creates a correspondence of roughly 5 women for every 4 men. And that assumes an even distribution across the remaining participants, which is absolutely not the case. The top performing men are not only having more sex with more women, they're having a lot more sex with a lot more women. So what does this mean? Well, if you put 2 and 2 together, it means that society is becoming increasingly polygamous, in which a smaller and smaller subset of men are enjoying a larger share of the sexual access to all women.
Just going to pause it there for a moment. Okay, so the top men, some people say it's 80-20, 80% of the women are sleeping with 20% of the men. Some people say it's 95-5. 95% of the women are sleeping with 5% of the men, or at least they're the ones that are pursuing it. So not only is one, like, did he say 1 in 3 women, 1 in 3 men are pushed out of the sexual marketplace altogether. Only 1 in 6 women are pushed out, or not having sex. They're not pushed out. They can have sex anytime they want, but they're not. So right there, that's a huge difference. That's like 15% to 30%. But of that 85% of women that are having sex, they're having sex with just such a small percentage of the men. This is why you have these groups on Facebook. Are we dating the same guy? Like every city has these groups. Look it up. Guys, if you didn't know about this, I was shocked when I heard about it. Literally Baltimore, DC, Oklahoma, every city has these. Are we dating the same guy? It's all these women in there trying to find out if the men that they're talking to or dating or sleeping with or all of the above are sleeping with other people. They're trying to catch. It's almost like a game of musical chairs. Like, the men are the chairs. There ain't enough of them. And the women are the people, and they're walking around, and the music stops. And then somebody's like, were you sitting in my chair? Like, were you sitting in this chair earlier? That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to find out if somebody else was sitting in their chair, if there was another man that was, they were in another woman was in that bed before them. Like, it's a cesspool, and it relates to monogamy only. It does. See, some people will say, well, aren't more men going to be pushed out of the sexual marketplace if you allow more men to marry, like marry more than one? And I would argue no. I would argue you wouldn't, actually, because right now you got men, the top guys that he mentioned here are already doing it, and they're having sex with multiple women at the same time, 5 or 6 maybe, right? In order for the numbers to work, it has to be that high. It has to be like the top guys are having sex with 4 or 5 girls at the same time, keeping them off the sexual marketplace, but keeping them on a rotation with that one man. Now imagine the man learns that you can have sex with more than one woman. You can be with more than one woman, but you have to provide and protect her. You have to marry her. Does that change who the men sleep with? Of course it does. Like, that's why I believe God allowed polygyny in the first place, was because for me, when I was out whoring around, there was no consequence attached to me having sex. I had sex and I moved on to the next one. And I had a roster just like these guys do, a rotation. And it cost me nothing. There was no responsibility. Now, if you would have told me, okay, wait, Rob, you have sex with her, she's going to be around now. She's yours till death do you part. Would that have changed if I slept with her or not? Of course it would. I wouldn't just go out and screw girls just to make them my wife and have to, be there and protect them and provide for them and all the things. So I would argue that polygyny would shrink the amount of women that these top guys are sleeping with. They may marry 2 or 3, but it's better than them running through 100 girls and keeping those girls off the market, at least temporarily, so that they can't find their person. And then these guys, are basically left out in the cold. So let's pick it back up. Feel free to drop questions and comments. I'd like to go over some.
To put that 5 to 4 ratio another way, this is intentional, but the data back it up. And just to be clear, this is not something men are doing. This is not something that men are forcing on women. Why? Well, in the first place, you have to remember that more men are getting less sex than they had 10 years ago. So if this is a conspiracy on the part of men, they're doing a really bad job of it. And in the second place, women are gatekeepers of sex. These women are not having sex with a smaller subset of...
Guys, did you hear what he said there? Women are the gatekeepers of sex. Again, this is why female promiscuity is so detestable to people. Because why do you put a gate around something? You put something behind a gate because it's valuable, right? So men are the gatekeepers of commitment. Women say when we have sex for the first time, 99.9% of the time. And men say if and when we get married, we're the ones that propose, give you our last name. So women are the gatekeepers of sex. Men are the gatekeepers of security. You put something behind a gate because it's valuable. If a woman that's just letting everybody get it, letting everybody in the gate, she didn't even find it valuable. Why should I? The equivalent of this is a man that proposed to every woman that he dated before you. You would not respect a man like that. You would think he was a weak piece of shit. You'd be like, ew, I thought you loved me. You proposed to me. I thought I was special. And you were just proposing to every girl you could, that anybody that would take it. You were just trying to give it away. You were just trying to get somebody to marry you. Like, you're a weak piece of shit. You're a weak man. That's what you would think. That is the equivalent of a promiscuous woman, because women are the gatekeepers of sex, not men. Men are not the gatekeepers of sex. Prostitution is the world's oldest profession. So the way to fix this problem that this man is talking about is for women to lock the gate. Got to get married. Some people say, they hear me talking about polygyny and they're like, wow, this is a real big deviation off your original message. And I'm like, it's not at all. I still believe that biblically that you should get married and then have sex, or if you have sex, you marry the person to avoid fornication. Either way works. Does that affect who you sleep with? Absolutely. You're not going to just sleep with somebody that you know that you just want to spend the rest, unless you want to spend the rest of your life with. You're not going to sleep with them. Okay, so that changes who you sleep with. So why waiting works? This polygyny discussion is just an extension of why waiting works. Yes, you should still wait to get married. You should wait to have sex to get married. But as a man, you have the biblical right to marry more than one. And that, I believe, makes marriage a lot more attractive to men, which would fix this record low marriage rate that we're facing right now. 5 out of every 1,000 people are getting married. It's the lowest it's ever been. And what do people do instead? They cohabitate, which is not great, because the chances of them breaking up are so much higher. Because someone that's not willing to get married is basically saying, you know what, you're good enough for now. Let's just move in together. Like, it shows that there's a flaw. There's a fracture in that relationship. You're not committed, So this video is almost over. We'll talk about it
men against their will. It's the women who are functionally voting with their feet that it's either these men or no men at all for me, thanks. And what's the likelihood that any one of these top men who now have historically unprecedented sexual access to women, what's the likelihood that one of these top men is going to exclusively commit to any one of these women? I would say that it becomes increasingly smaller.
Boom. Did you hear that? So basically,
this is one of the
he said, what are the chances?
Unintended consequences.
Sorry. He said, what are the chances that these men that have historical unprecedented access to women, that one of them is going to commit to these women that they're banging, right? It's like it becomes exponentially harder as time goes on. And as this thing increases, as women continue to make more money, continue to get better educated because they're hypergamous, that shrinks the dating pool. It makes that percentage smaller and smaller. So these guys at the top, they become less incentivized to marry these women, which again, the numbers support. The marriage rates are at an all-time low right now. The guys that would actually marry them, let me switch. I'm going to switch to this other video I want to show you. This is a good one by a guy named, it goes by Homath. Hilarious. Watch this one. All right, where we at? Here we go.
So the men with hose are up.
Let me refresh it.
Men with no hose. Where are you?
So the men with hose are up here, receiving all of the attention from the hose, including you. And the men without hose are down here, trying to contact you on Bumble and not receiving an answer. Hope that helps.
I love that video. It's so simple and so true. It's like the equivalent, that woman's equal in the sexual marketplace, she's not giving any attention to, because she's out hooking up with these top alpha men. It's crazy, All right, let's keep going. I got a couple more videos I want to show you. All right, here we go. All right, let's see if this works.
Is fucking broken. 30% of men on dating apps or on Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge are fucking married. Like something is broken.
Yes.
Do you think there is a crisis in dating? Do you think there's an inequity?
What do you mean inequity?
So,
like,
so for instance, a small group of men, and I'm not saying 20% of men are fucking 80% of women, but a small group of men, like say 30% of men are having sex with like 65% of the women.
No, I don't think
that's
borne out by the data. That's only borne out by Tinder swipes and swiping. But when you look at the data, it doesn't seem that's
okay. Well, let's go from beyond the data. Let's look at the enormous amount of men that are addicted to porn. Let's look at the enormous amount of men that don't necessarily approach women anymore. You got women approaching this, and this is where you got to kind of take the stats and then also take common sense and look at like everything else. Hold on, stop. Yeah. You got to look at the totality of the circumstances. Stats give you one picture, and then it's up to you to use critical thinking to establish the other picture. If guys are getting laid and they're fucking women, they're not going to be watching porn most of the time.
Then why that's
tell
not
me
true?
why there's an enormous amount of men that have debilitating addictions to pornography. Matter of fact, you benefit from it significantly. You make a significant amount of money off of your OnlyFans. You would not be able to do that if men were actually getting laid.
Well, then how come there was
your
that
own
recent...
success is contingent upon men not getting laid.
So do you hear what he said? Basically, this porn addiction results from the result of this porn addiction is because men aren't getting laid. And that is true. I can be honest with you and say that when I was out sexually active, I didn't look at porn. I never even thought of looking at porn. I was, ejaculating plenty. I didn't build up. It wasn't even on my radar, so not to say that some men don't do it. Maybe they do. I know married men do it, but a lot of married men are caught in sexless marriages too. But when you're actually having sex regularly, it's like saying, when your stomach is full, you're not tempted, you're not starving, you're not tempted to go out and eat. So it's the same thing. It's when you're starving, when you're not having sex, that porn becomes an issue again to these men. 1 in 3 men right now that are pushed out of the sexual marketplace, which is why OnlyFans and the pornography business is so big. Let's keep going.
Recent study on you're probably talking about what I'm talking about. The demographics, 90 or something % of men on OnlyFans are married. So how are they lonely losers?
Because they're not having sex.
So he started off this video by saying something is broken. He's like 30% of men on dating sites are married. Something is broken with the model. That's what he said. So think about that. Like, I was messaging with a guy the other day. He saw a couple of my videos. He's married. His wife, for some reason, I don't know if his wife stopped having sex with him or she started mistreating him or whatever, but he ended up going out and starting dating somebody else behind her back. And then they got into an argument and push came to shove, and he just admitted it, that he has this other girl, and he's been seeing her for like a couple of years. And he says now he's in love with her, but he's also in love with his wife, and she's the mother of his children. And he's like, I treat her so well. She's mad about it and she threatens to leave, but I treat her so well so she doesn't actually leave. And he's trying to reconcile what to even do. Now, I want you to think about this. Okay. Under monogamy only, because this happened. I didn't encourage it to happen. He started messing with this girl a couple years ago, long before I started talking about polygyny. But he's got a situation on his hands. So under monogamy only, what all my opponents would say that or people that are proponents of monogamy only, they should say, well, he should just leave that girl. He should just disregard that new girl and be with his first wife and the mother to his children. Who gets screwed in that deal? She does. I mean, the woman that he leaves. So because what happens for women is their chances for getting a divorce go up exponentially with each sex partner. That's proven. Women with higher sex partners have higher divorce rates. And this is why you have a lot of older women that can't find a husband, potentially. I'm not saying necessarily that's the case, but I believe that lends to it. But I was watching this movie the other night. I think it was called Above Suspicion. And it was a true story about this FBI agent. He goes to this small town, starts working with this informant, this girl, this woman. She had 2 kids, and she starts giving him information. The guy's married. He's got a little baby with his wife, and he starts fucking the informant. They start having sex, have an affair. She falls in love with him, and she basically, wants him to leave his wife, and he doesn't want to leave his wife, and it creates all these problems. She goes back to using drugs, and her life just basically gets ruined. She gets beat up by people that she's informing upon. And she, her life just spirals down to the point where she gets into this argument with him in a car, and he accidentally kills her because she attacks him like physically, and he accidentally kills her. This is a true story. And the guy goes to jail, and I'm thinking to myself, if polygyny was allowed, if people knew that it was approved of by God and there wasn't such a stigma around it, think about how that everybody's situation would have been different. Everybody's situation would have been different. Like, okay, should the guy have done it or not? No. I mean, he shouldn't have cheated. He shouldn't have lied to his wife, but he did. And now, so like the girl died, the guy got locked up and spent 12 years in jail. The first wife died a year before the guy got out. She drank herself to death. The kids were left without a father. Like, it created a fucking mess. It was already a mess, but there would have been a better way to handle it, which is why if you go back to Exodus 22:16, the Bible says that if a man seduces a virgin, he must marry her, whether he's got a first wife or not, whether he's married or not, he's got to marry her because somebody's got to take care of that woman. And the man, there has to be a consequence for him. Under monogamy only, there is zero consequence for the man. He can just fuck her and bounce. That's exactly what happens right now. And this is why I said in the post, God's laws protect women and families. Man's laws destroy them. So again, back to this guy I was talking to on Facebook. He's got this girl he's been seeing for a couple years that he says he's in love with. And he's like, look, he goes, I can tell you, I genuinely in love with them both. He's like, I don't know what to do. He's like, I've never been more content either. Like, meaning like he was always a scumbag. He was always trying to, fuck other girls as often as he could. And he's like, I've never been so content. Like, he doesn't want to have sex with anybody else. He's content with those two. Now, people can say, oh, that's bullshit. He's a piece of shit. But like, look, this is what men are doing. 30% of men on dating apps are married. They're married because they're stuck in sexless marriages. And something is wrong with the model. Okay. I know for me, here's something else he said, because he treats them both really well. Right. And I said, I look at my previous relationships that I was in because I believed in monogamy. I bet 2 decades of my life on monogamy. I've been abstinent for 18 of the last 23 years. That's a long time. Outside of 2 mistakes. Always have to add that for all the haters out there. So I believed in this. But when I was in monogamous relationships, it didn't feel natural to me. So like now, whatever woman I talk to and marry, I'm going to say, if you're not okay with me taking a second, I am not the man for you. Not to say I ever will, but if God tells me to, I will. Or if I feel like I want to, I will, because I have the biblical right to. And what that would do for me, for that woman, because if she says, okay, yes, I would treat her. I mean, I wouldn't even mean to do it. I wouldn't even do it necessarily consciously, but I know I would treat that woman so good. I treat her so much better because she's not trying to force me into some relationship structure, some model that isn't natural for me. Deep down, I believe my former girlfriends, I resented them on some level without knowing it because I believed in monogamy and this is just what everybody does. And this is what I've been taught. And this is what you should do. But somewhere deep down, I resented them because I was forced into some relationship structure model that wasn't natural to me. So what I had to do eventually was push them away because I knew I couldn't give them what society told me I had to give them, which was monogamy. Looking back, though, I don't necessarily believe that men and women show love the same way. I think women show love through sexual exclusivity, but men show love through provision and protection. Like, women don't have sex unemotionally, or very rarely. They might have had it so much that they've completely built up a wall around their heart where they can just go out and fuck guys and not feel anything. But generally, especially if they haven't had a lot of sex, they have emotions are tied to sex. They bond through sex. They have to like a guy. They can't just go. For a man, it's not that way. Man can just go fuck. We can just it's like brushing our teeth and we're like getting an oil change on our car. It means nothing. Now, I'm not saying it's right. It isn't right. Go back to what I said. If you sleep with her, she's yours. You got to take care of her. I'm not suggesting anyone being a whore. But what I am saying is that men and women are different. And we have to look at that and what God says about sex and relationships are not the same for men and women. And women hate to hear that because it subjugates the woman to the man. And automatically, just knowing that a man has the right to take a second wife and the woman doesn't have a right to take a second husband, that subjugates her. That means she's under his authority. He has dominion over her, and they hate it. All these women that have these Jezebel spirits out there, they want to control. They don't want to be, they want equal. They want equality. Look, the Bible is not egalitarian. It's not men and women are equal. No, the man is the head. The woman is not. Doesn't mean that he should be a piece of shit and mistreat the woman. Not at all. The Bible says, love your wives as Christ loved the church. What did Christ do for the church? He died for her. We should literally be willing to lay down our lives and die for our woman if it comes to that. But he's in charge. Women don't like to hear that. Let's keep going. Where are we at? Lost my place. Oh, here we go.
Do you realize, ladies, that so many guys are in marriages where their woman doesn't want to fuck them anymore?
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't want to like expose my friend or anything, but she has sex with her boyfriend every single
porn. Why are so many guys struggling to get dates? Why do so many men fail on Instagram with DMing girls? Why do so many guys strike out when they talk to women? Why do most guys get rejected? If you look at the totality of the circumstances, it's very obvious.
Why are we? My point is, why are we here? Why is there a Fresh and Fit? Why are his books best-selling? Why do I have 2,700 clients?
Like when it comes to porn addiction, one, it's super misunderstood. I would look at Dr. Nicole Prouse, UCLA a neuroscientist. No, moral incongruence seems to be a huge factor when it comes to porn addiction. It's not even considered an addiction by the APA or the DSM-5.
That's fine, but what I'm saying is that's one thing. Then the friendless thing is another thing.
The friendless thing is a huge thing. I agree with that.
For sure. But then there's Scott Galloway talking about the inequity of dating, and then Chris Williamson today talking about 50% of men dropping out of dating. And then the people watching this, and all the other content with millions of people watching, and Andrew Tate becoming the most Google person in the world, and me, my little ass getting 2,700 clients, and his books being bestsellers. At some point, something is fucking broken. 30% of men on dating apps or on Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge are fucking married. Something is broken.
Yes, I understand that. And I don't know if you guys, I recommend everyone read Johan Hari's Lost Connections. I do agree with you. Actually, social media.
See, again, something's broken. It goes back to the monogamy-only model, guys. Something's majorly broken. And again, this is why I'm doing this debate. Because I want to get, and I actually got some exciting news. Today, I had two pastors that have agreed to do the debate. So that's exciting. Hopefully in the next week, we'll be able to line it up. I'm going to bring on a guy named Pete Rambo. Had him on my podcast. He's like the OG in the polygyny space. He just took a second wife. And I may bring on the Bible marriages guy that's been commenting on a lot of my posts. Some people think it's me. I'm flattered, to be honest. Thank you for thinking that, because that guy is really smart. And they're going to debate, and I'm going to moderate. I'll probably chime in too. Obviously, you know what side I'm on. But we're going to get to the truth, because the truth is important on this topic. It's not just important. This is going to be my platform from now on, guys. I know people hate it. They're like, why are you so obsessed with this? Why is all this you're talking about? Because it's that important. Not only what it costs me not knowing it, but what it's doing to the world, because they've been sold this bullshit, this horse shit of monogamy only. That's not in the Bible. It's not there. God regulated polygyny in Exodus 21:10. He said, if man takes a second wife, blah, 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 blah. God doesn't regulate sin. It also commanded it, Exodus 22:16. It also, God said to David, I gave you your wives. And he had 18 of them. And if they hadn't been enough, I would have given you more if you just asked. God wouldn't have said that to David if it was a sin. Not to mention, when you think about all the other times that polygyny was practiced, it was never even spoken negatively about. This idea of one man, one woman till death do us part did not come from the Bible. It came from the Romans. Christians were living amongst the Romans, okay? And it permeated its way in. It's not biblical. And again, we're going to get to the bottom on the debate, and we're going to see who's right. And I hope you all tune in. But something's broken with the model. And you can see the results of it everywhere around you. And people will blame it on lots of different things. And maybe those things play a part too. But it's impossible for us to know what living under polygyny, a society where polygyny was decriminalized and destigmatized, because we've never done it. But we do know what monogamy only produces, and it sucks. It's horrible, as you can see for yourself.
Social media, it seems, social media does seem to have contributed to a lot of these issues, especially when it comes to loneliness for everybody. I agree there are issues. I just don't think there's prevalent.
Because before they cited the 2018 study, and you're saying it's not that high. And what I'm telling you is that it's definitely damn near close, if not spot on, because when you look at all the other factors and use critical thinking, look at the explosion of dating content for men, look at the meteoric rise of Andrew Tate world fucking wide, right? Because he's saying things that are very basic, but a lot of guys have not been able to express.
You have to understand, like literally, like Andrew, what is his name? Date Psych, whatever his name is. His entire existence comes from
quote unquote masculinity. Now I agree with him also that watching this, it's like being in a hospital and being like, look at all these. I do think that, and I like how he put actual policy proposals.
The point I'm trying to make is that there is an overwhelming amount of men that are fucking clueless and not getting laid. That's a fucking fact.
That's true, but I don't think
that's a fact.
Okay, so you're arguing to argue. Real quick.
All right, let's keep going. There's another video I want to show you here. Let me see. Going back. Let's see. What's the next one? Yeah, let's switch. I want to show you this Instagram video. Oh, this is good. Yeah, I played this the other day.
UK, it is illegal for you to get a second wife, but you can have a mistress and a girlfriend and a side chick. Calm. Excuse me, I can't have a second wife that I'm going to honor and respect and look after and provide for her and treat her like my wife, but I can have a mistress and girlfriend. This is nonsense. Some people come and say to me and go, oh, you only became a Muslim because of the second, third, fourth wife. As a Muslim, if I get married to the first wife, I have to speak to her father, protect, provide, give her dowry, pay for everything, even if she's rich. And then if I get a second wife, I have to do the same. And now let's take me as a non-Muslim. No rules and regulations, and I can do whatever I like. Which one's easy?
Okay, did you hear what he said? Basically, people try to challenge him and say, oh, you only became a Muslim because you want to take a second or third wife. And he's like, dude, if I take a second or third wife, I have to go pay a dowry. He has to go, give her dad something. And he's got to provide and protect for her and do all these things. He's like, as a non-Muslim, I ain't got to do shit. I could just go out and do whatever the hell I want. And there's no rules around it. And this is why I go back to this. Because in Christianity, because there's not an ethical path for a man to have more than one, to have some variety, because I do believe that some men crave variety. Women hate that I say that, but it's true, and the evidence is all around. 30% of men on dating apps, rampant adultery. Most of the divorces that I came across, at least, were due to infidelity, men stepping out. And think about all those that could be avoided. They could all be avoided if people came to the realization that polygyny was biblical. And it wasn't so hated on by everybody. Not to say that everybody's going to do it. A very small percentage of people will probably do it. 5% of men, maybe 10. I don't know. I would imagine it wouldn't even be more than 5. But some men will. And if that helped prevent all these divorces, wouldn't that be better? So what I was going with that is, look, because there's not an ethical path for men to practice, for them to express the fact that they have a desire for variety, because there's not an ethical path for them to do this, they do it unethically. They just do it anyway, but they do it unethically. They go out and they lie and they cheat and they, get on dating apps and OnlyFans. And then I believe, honestly, because women have something called competition anxiety, that once they lock that man down in a committed relationship, they know that he's got no other outlet, that she's it, right here. This is it. This is all. If he wants to have sex, this. I got the control to that. I'm not in the mood. I'm tired. I got a headache. This is why you got a lot of men that are caught in sexless marriages, because there's no competition anxiety. The woman, she doesn't want to give up her right to criticize the man, get fat, and then choose to divorce him and wreck him in divorce court, which is what happens a lot. 75% of the women that are filing for divorce are the ones that file for divorce, not the men. Only 25% of the time do the men file for divorce. 75% of the time it's the women. And women don't want to give up their right to do those things. Hell no, they don't want competition. That would mean they might have to work a little bit, right? Like, honestly, or I don't know exactly why, but I believe that's probably part of it. Why God allowed it. I just don't, again, going back to the 56% divorce rate, you can't tell me this is God's best. I don't buy it. In addition to the fact that when I read the Bible, I don't see it. All right, let me show you another one. All right, this is a good one here.
Healthy-looking eyes.
I really like this guy, Michael Sartain.
New Lumify Eye Illuminations, only in the eye care aisle.
I might get him on my podcast, I'm thinking. Oops, excuse me.
Whoever said dog was man's best friend has never ridden this hog.
Seymour Roas here with Mountain.
Rows, 8s is 0s, 9s is like 5s, and 10s is 10s. Like that's how they start to see men, and they start to see these things disproportionately. And one of the things that I'm starting to notice, because I just finished Book of Numbers by Aaron Clary, fantastic book.
Yeah,
Everyone here, there's no reason to not read that book. It is so short. It is fucking
Aaron
phenomenal.
Clary, who will be back in Las Vegas in November.
Please, let's get Aaron Clary on the way. Aaron Clary is an economist, but he's probably the only economist in the world who basically looks at the amount of time that women spend looking for men and the amount of time that men spend looking for women, and what is the economic cost of those things.
Oh, wow.
And then he looks at the predicament that happens when you have social media that make women and men delusional as to what they can get, and therefore they are wasting their time. They're aiming too high for who they can get, and they're dissatisfied with their current partner because social media has sort of ruined their ability to get the dopamine hit off their perfectly good partner that they found. And like what I like to say before, someone who was, I have a friend of mine, I mentioned her before, Jojo Von Salty. Jojo was in Wichita, Kansas, and she was probably the cutest girl at the Hooters in Wichita, Kansas, let's say 2004. And if you're ever in a place like Waco, you just realize since the creation of social media. And so what's happened is now we're wasting massive amounts of time on Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge. And one of the things that they go over is like literally like 6,000 left swipes for like one date is what some women are going through. The top like I mentioned before, the top 10% of men on Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge are getting 63% of the right swipes. The top 20% of men are getting 83% of the right swipes.
All right. Did y'all hear that? 83% of the men, the top 20% of men are getting 83% of the swipes. Again, goes back to the 80-20 rule. So what that does is it pushes the majority of men out of the sexual marketplace. They don't even have a chance. They're not even being seen. Okay. Now, if you look at this program, I put together a program recently called the Alpha Man Blueprint, and I've gotten so much shit. Oh, you think you're an alpha? You're not an alpha. Like, first off, I never said that I was. What I'm trying to help men do is I'm trying to help those bottom 80% level up so that they get in the game, so women even look at them to fix some of this fucking imbalance. People assume that I'm up to something bad. Like, you don't even know what I'm doing. And to be honest, I don't feel like I need to explain myself to you, which is why I haven't in the comments a lot. But I'm trying to help the men level up so that you'll even look at them so that you can find a husband. I'm trying to help. I'm not trying to like beat my chest and be like, oh, I'm an alpha, like I'm King Kong or something. No, I'm trying to help the men get in better shape, get clear about their purpose, and then teach them, look, don't have sex until marriage. That's part of my program is sexual purity. I have them read the book. I have them learn about the practicality of saving sex for marriage, honoring a woman. Now, will polygyny be part of it? It may, because I believe that that's biblical. That's not in it yet. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help. I'm trying to fix the problem, at least do my part to fix the problem, which what needs to happen is men need to become more masculine. The reason that those top 20% of men are doing so well with the majority of women is because they have something that those women want. Whether it's their looks, whether it's they're driven by their purpose, and maybe they have a solid business or they're going after their calling. Maybe it's because they're spiritual leaders. Maybe it's because there's something else I was thinking of. What just escaped me? There was another thing that I was thinking of. I don't remember. But anyway, that's what the purpose of the program is for, is to help men get to level up, get into great shape, learn how to use their masculine frame, their masculine energy, be confident, get good pictures, put them on dating apps, know how to communicate with women a little bit. Like, those are good things. Women should be happy that I'm trying to help men do these things, because that creates a bigger pool of men to talk to and eventually marry. Because if y'all are going to all compete for the same 20% of men, or probably even a lot smaller than that, then there's going to be a lot of you that are left out, right? That means that's 4 to 1, right? 4 to 1. That means three out of every 4 of you won't have someone. So we have to get the men to level up, to be more masculine, to be what you would consider attractive. And the way to do that is sometimes they need a little help. They don't necessarily know how to find their purpose. They don't know how to meal prep and get in shape, and maybe they don't know, or maybe they don't have a community of men to run with in order to do it. And that's what I'm trying to do, is to provide them. It's because it becomes easier to work on yourself when you have other guys to deal with. And that's the purpose of the Alpha Man Blueprint. Not that I felt like I needed to explain myself, but some people are misunderstanding the purpose of why I created it. Is I'm trying to help men in order to fix this imbalance, which will ultimately help women.
You see Tyler over here cheering because he gets nothing but right swipes. But what's happened is a disproportionately small amount of men are getting all this attention from women, and the vast majority of men are deemed to be unattractive by the vast majority of women.
Invisible. Most
women find most men to be unattractive. Whereas conversely, and I've used this stat before, and I love this statistic because it kind of shows the difference. The top 63% of right swipes for women go to 43% of women. Again, the top 63% of right swipes for men go to the top 10% of men, but the top 43% of women, which means men see 5s as 5s, 6s as 6s, and 7s as 7s. Women see 5s as 0s, 6s as 0s, 7s as 0s, 8s as 0s, 9s as like 5s, and 10s as 10s. Like that's how they start to see men, and they start to see these things disproportionately. We've done on this show ad nauseum the delusional calculator, where we have women come in there, we ask them what the average,
that up in a bit.
what the average height they want. They all want 6 feet taller, how much they want these men to make. 6 feet taller, that's the top 14% of the population. They want to make $100,000 a year. That puts you in the top 26% of the
Allie's
population.
laughing because it's all she never.
so
you've
true.
never been.
The top 26% of the population, they want them to be obese. Well, men who aren't obese, that's only 25% of men that are not obese, and you want them to not be married. Well, guess what, ladies? All the good-looking guys who are fit and make $100,000 a year, a lot of them are fucking married. By the way, 30% of the men on Tinder are married. 30%. That is like one of the most outrageous statistics. For some of you, it's probably...
Dude, that's what's crazy. You talk about the model being broken. Like, first off, the women are all competing for those same top tier men. And think about the culture that creates amongst women, right? Because you're telling what you believe, or at least you've been taught, is that men only get one ticket. So all you women are trying to get that one ticket out of those few men. And what happens is most of the women get left out. Right? Or what happens is, actually in reality, is most of the women will get used by that man. They'll get slept with, but they'll never get the relationship. And then they'll end up with probably a beta man is what will happen. Mathematically, that's what has to happen, or they just won't get married at all. People get upset that I call someone a beta man. I'm just talking about a man that's not in that top 20%. And you're defining that, not me. And women are the ones that are defining that. So there are, whatever you want to call those top 20%, I can use whatever term you want. And whatever you want to call those bottom 80% of the men that aren't getting swiped on or getting laid, I'll call them whatever you want. I'm just using the word beta man because I feel like everybody knows what I'm talking about. But these are the realities of the numbers. And the way to stop it is women got to stop having sex before marriage, stop offering it to men, because men aren't going to stop trying. So again, we have to go back to the source of the supply chain, which is the women, and convince them that this is not going to help them get what they want, and to stop. But also convince men, I believe, the way to make marriage more attractive is to share the truth of polygyny with them. That they have a biblical right to take more than one if they so chose. What will that do? Now all of a sudden those top tier men, they're not competing for that one ticket from that man anymore, because that man doesn't get one ticket. He gets 2 or 3 or 4, how many ever he can provide and protect. He can have as many as he can provide for and protect. It's up to the women to decide if they want to be in that situation. How prideful is it of people to say that wouldn't be right for someone? Who the fuck are you to tell someone else how they should live their life? Like, that to me is the ultimate like epitome of self-righteousness. Like, okay, you don't have to do it, but how dare you tell someone else how they should live their life? You don't know them. You don't know how they're wired and what would be right for them and their situation. If a man wants to come along like this guy I'm going to have on my podcast Friday, KGB, the ex Green Bay Packer. He married a second wife. She was a widow. She had 2 small children, and he married her, and he did it because she was so good to his father. She was basically like a hospice nurse, helped him take care of his father. And she was just so kind and such a good woman. And the kids were there, and they didn't have anybody. And he basically, and he's a Torah observant Jew. So he didn't believe that there was anything wrong with it. So he married her, and the kids were like so happy. The kids were like crying. They're like, "Are you going to be our daddy now?" And they were so happy to have a dad. And I'm like, think about, like, isn't that the heart of God? But look at the cesspool that we have on our hands with monogamy only. It's a fucking mess. Again, most men won't do what I did. I was like a test subject. I was like a guinea pig. It showed me all this, showed me all the problems with it, even though I didn't know about polygyny. I did not know. I believe monogamy. People think I'm perverting scripture. I'm like, you think I waited till I was 51 years old to pervert scripture? I'm like, I'm old now. Like, I should have did it 10 years ago if I was going to do it. I had plenty of women around me 10 years ago. I was like, no, I didn't just wait. Like, this is the truth, guys. I know it doesn't seem that way. I know how it looks. It seems crazy, but if you dig a little bit, you're going to find the truth, and you're going to see what I've seen. And the fact is that this is not biblical. And we're going to prove that on the debate. And these things that these people are talking about are all the consequences of this horse shit that we've been fed, this monogamy only model. Again, nothing wrong with monogamy. I think it's what most people will do, but monogamy only is the problem. It creates problems, and it's unbiblical.
Probably not, or if you're an exotic dancer or whatever, you're probably like, yeah, I thought it would be 50%. But for me, I just like, it's just where society has broken somewhere. If 30% of men on Tinder are married, that is mind-boggling to me, right? They're not even considering the concept of monogamy. Now, everything I just said, it does sound like a lot of gloom and doom. And what my question for you is, who here believes that in the future you would be comfortable with a traditional monogamy? This is something that you're looking for, a traditional monogamy. Jessica.
Closed on his end, closed on your end.
Jessica, would you be comfortable, or like today, with a traditional monogamous relationship?
Are you in a relationship right now?
I would think I would be.
Closer to the mic, please.
There you go.
Yeah, I think so. Yes, monogamy is something I
but hold on.
would be mad about.
So let's not think of it theoretically. Do you think that the concept of you living in Scottsdale, finding a man that you find attractive enough to be in a relationship with, but he's not so attractive that he's going to have a hard time not cheating, stepping out on you, those things like that? Do you think traditional monogamy is the only way for you to go forward?
No.
You don't. What other alternatives do you see?
Maybe an open relationship, maybe,
Like-
but with like trust and honesty.
Okay.
You know, not hiding it and not doing it behind their back, but like open about it.
And it'd be open on your end as well.
Correct.
Okay, so that's what you would look for. So polyamory. That's the word for it. Sorry,
Okay, now I know.
It's the Greek word that means poly.
Just to be clear, the Bible doesn't condone polyamory. I'm not an advocate of it. I am an advocate of polygyny only because I believe that's biblical. A lot of women have said, well, what about what about women taking more than one husband? Show me that in the Bible and I'm all for it. But if you can't show me it in the Bible, then I can't support it. I can show you in the Bible where polygyny was regulated and even commanded at times. But again, people were more open to this, to non-monogamy situations of relationship structures, because people are seeing the fact that this shit ain't working. It's not working. So they're doing they're coming up with all kinds of crazy things on their own, like polyamory. And there's a lot of different things beside that I'm probably not even aware of, because again, monogamy only is not serving us anymore. And the writing's on the wall. I mean,
it's many.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
Mono, poly.
Many loves. Cool. Alexis, what do you think?
Are you comfortable?
Sorry about the commercials, guys.
I'm not a monogamy type of person.
Yeah.
I believe in communication and comprehension on all partners. It doesn't mean I'm against monogamy. It just means I don't feel it's right.
All right. I want to share something else with you. So first off, people have said, well, would you want your wife, having sex with another man? And I'm like, of course not. No. and I believe you might say it's a double standard, but I believe if a woman was with the right man that was in his masculine frame, she wouldn't even want to have sex with another man. So no, my wives, if I have more than one, will never be allowed to touch another man. I'll make that clear. People can say that's sexist or unequal. It doesn't matter. It's biblical, and I can support it biblically. So that's all that matters to me. What else was I going to say? Now I will say this. Okay, if you look, and I can send anyone the article, and I'm sure this will be called blasphemous or heretical. But if you look at the Bible, never in the Bible, anytime the Bible talked about homosexual sex, it was all male. It was all men on men. Never once did God mention female sex in the Bible. Not once. Now, I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm not saying that's not sin. I'm just saying that's pretty freaking odd. Like, why was it never mentioned? It was men penetrating men. That was always the condemnation and the sin. It wasn't women. And I have a feeling why that's true. I think because polygyny is fine by God, and God knew that if a man had more than one wife, he might want to take them to bed together at some point. That's what I believe. I don't know if it's true, but I'm saying biblically, I can't find a command against it. And people I know are going to hate to hear that, but I can send you the articles that I've read that go back and they translate the original words, and there's never once was it mentioned in the Bible. So that being said, if that were true, which I believe it might be, if a woman, and women are more sexually flexible than men, they are. They're just more sexually flexible. I mean, the majority of the women I dated were either bisexual or bi-curious. Again, I thought that was sinful, and it was because I was having sex with them outside of marriage. But if a woman was into girls, and everybody was in a marriage, let's say there was 3 people in a marriage, and there were two men, 2 women, and a man, and the women liked each other, isn't everybody winning? Like, everybody gets something extra out of it. I know people don't like to hear that, but again, I have to go back to the Bible for everything. And if I don't see it in there, regardless of what society tells me, regardless of what the mainstream church thinking is, I have to go back to what the Bible says and make decisions on my life based on that. So yeah, feel free to fact check that though. Drop it in the comments if you think I'm wrong there.
For me.
Are you still filming studio adult work now?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now,
I'm contracted with Brazzers.
Beautiful. So in doing so, have you ever had a situation, because we talked about this with Sarah before, where she's in a relationship and she still films? Have you had that? Have you ever done that before?
Yeah, I certainly have.
Did that ever make your partner feel uncomfortable, or was your partner in the industry? Like, how did that work?
One partner, I think, definitely made him feel uncomfortable because of his friends.
I think that was we've already showed you the parts that I want to show you. Actually, let me think. There's one more video. Give me a second. Let me pull this up real quick. That was a good one I saw the other day that I want to share with y'all. I don't know where it's at, guys. I can't find it. I think we're going to call it for this one. So I'm going to try to do this one regularly. If you have any videos that you want me to break down, comment on, send them to me. Drop them in my inbox on Facebook Messenger, or you can drop them in a comment if you like on YouTube or wherever you're watching this. You can also email me at rob@robbkowalski.com. But I'm going to try to do these every week, maybe, where we go over a few videos together and break them down and talk about some of these issues. I'm excited about the debate that's coming up. If you're just tuning in, hopefully in the next week, I'm going to have 2 proponents of polygyny versus 2 opponents of polygyny go at it. These are going to be guys that are at the highest level. The 2 guys that are opponents or ordained pastors. The 2 proponents of it are, one guy's Pete Rambo, who was on my podcast. He's like the OG of polygyny, and maybe this Bible Marriages guy. And I'm excited. I'm excited to get to the truth and continue to expose it. I know many of y'all don't necessarily believe it's the truth at this point. I would say I know it's the truth, but I would say at the very least, I strongly believe it, like 99% sure that I'm right. But yeah, tune in for that. Hopefully that'll be in the next week. Guys, if you haven't joined the Unplugged Christian Alphas group, it's on Facebook. It's free to join. Try to post good content in there, workout tips on finding your purpose. We share different resources, encourage each other to level up and just become the men God intended us to be, so that we can go out and find high value Christian women and be good husbands and fathers. That's kind of the goal of the group. So I'm excited for the way that's coming together. And yeah, that's it. So I'll see you all in the next video. Actually, you know what? Let me go over the comments real quick. I haven't even looked at the comments. Let's see. Lots of comments here. Okay, good. Whoops. All right. 26 comments here. Okay. Let's see. Cindy Spargo was here. Julianne, Jennifer Timmons, Cyrus Carter. What's up, Cyrus? I appreciate you, brother. There's a good God-fearing man out there spreading the truth from Washington, D.C. All right, brother. What are you doing for New Year's Eve? You should come up. Women are women are dissatisfied with men. If we're the ones initiating divorce, how does men taking more wives solve anything? So to clarify that, what I think is because women have competition anxiety and there's not competition within the marriage because they know the man isn't allowed to take a second wife. So that changes the way they treat the man. That, like I mentioned earlier in the video. And again, I haven't done it, so I don't know for sure, but this is what I believe. And I've been told that too, that the dynamics of the relationship change when polygyny is introduced, or even knowing the fact that it's a man's biblical right to do it. Most women file for divorce on the grounds of infidelity. Let the court stop rewarding women in divorce and see what happens. Yeah, that's true. So think about the man stepping out. He's being unfaithful. He's being deceptive. And then it results in a divorce. And the whole thing gets shattered. Somebody was talking about the thing that happened with Garth Brooks and how the whole thing could have been avoided if polygyny, but instead families get ruined. Families get torn apart. Women end up being left out in the cold, older. I mentioned this in a video before. A man might decide he hits a middle-age crisis and he goes out and he has an affair with a younger woman and ends up leaving his wife for the younger woman. Now the old woman, she's older and she's left and the kids are left and the man, abandons his family. That's not what God wants. I'm not saying that he should necessarily desire a younger woman, but it does happen. And this is a responsible way to deal with the situation. Chelsea said, wait, so your girl can have a girlfriend? No, she cannot have a girlfriend. But if I have 2 wives, that's a different story. Cindy Spargo said, I think it's pride that causes men to feel entitled to having sex with as many women as they want. I agree. I don't know if it's pride. It's just it's available. Women are offering it. If they can do it, if they're part of those top 10% of men, they're gonna do it more than likely. She said, I don't know that polygamy would solve this issue. I believe it's the thrill factor and cheating that drives people to do it. I mean, that's an opinion, but we don't know, right? Because we haven't done it. So again, we're just speculating. But if you look at the men in the Bible, I don't see evidence of the patriarchs cheating. Did Abraham cheat? Did Jacob cheat? Did Gideon cheat? Did David cheat? Did all these guys that were polygamous, did any of them cheat? Well, David did, right? But he did marry Bathsheba after he murdered Uriah. But what's funny, and this is something else, just a good little note, is the Bible says that David was a man after God's own heart, and he did right in the sight. He did right in all the ways of God, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite, something along those lines. It never mentioned the fact that he had 18 wives. It said he did right in everything by God, except in this one thing. He obeyed all the laws except for killing this guy. Never mentioned the polygyny. Like, this is a man after God's own heart. Again, Moses spoke with God face to face, literally wrote the Bible. He wrote the law, and he had 2 wives. And they're like, no, that's not what it means. Like, he wrote it, and he didn't believe what you're saying. And God never said anything to him. He's leading God's people all these years. And God never said, hey, bro, shouldn't do that. Like, why'd you do that? Nothing. Never, ever. Not one person in the whole thing. Christians are the spiritual offspring of the Jews. They are our spiritual forefathers. We were grafted in. And we're saying, okay, well, it was right for them because that was a long time ago, but not right for us now. Look at the fucking cesspool we're in. Why isn't it right for us? You could say, oh, that was because of war and they needed to populate the earth. Well, I could come up with just as many reasons right now why it would make sense. Just as many practical reasons that I could pull out of my ass, like you're pulling those out of your ass because it's not in the Bible to say populating the earth or because there was wars or whatever. You're just making that up, speculating. I could come up with just as many reasons like that myself why this would be a very good thing for the world. For the season that we're in right now, since the sexual revolution, the mess that we're in, the marriage rates being super low, fornication, a million abortions a year, all the things that we're facing, the imbalance, 20 million more women in the church than there are men in the United States. These women want to be married. Mathematically impossible for them to find a husband. For all of them, at least. 20 million of them will be left out. And there's more men leaving the church every day. So, yeah, going to keep talking about it. Valentine said, Jesus even comes from the line of Bathsheba, if I'm remembering correctly. Great point. Also, Jesus in the parable of the 10 virgins, Jesus compares himself to a polygamist. You actually think Jesus would do that if it was sin? Is Jesus going to compare himself to a murderer or a pedophile? No, of course not. He says the women were, first off, again, they were virgins. So we know they're brides because some people like to say, no, they weren't brides. They were bridesmaids. Why include that they were virgins? Why would you include that detail? Number 2, bridesmaids didn't even exist in Jewish culture in those times. Okay. And number 3, the women, when they come to the door, they knock on the door, they say, Master, Master, let us in. You don't call a man, your friend's future husband, master, because master means the person you belong to back then, or the definition of that original word is the person that owns the thing. You're not going to call your friend's future husband master. Okay, so these women were brides. Jesus compared himself to a polygamist. I know it was only a parable. It wasn't, a real story, but it was an analogy and a parable. And Jesus could have used anything. He could have used anything to describe that, to compare himself. People say it's about the return of Jesus and the church being ready. I understand what it's about, but he could have made that analogy using any story, any example, but he chose polygamy. And you're saying it's sin. I don't buy it. There's no way in hell that Jesus would have compared himself to something sinful. Wouldn't happen. Anyway, that's it for today. I'm going to keep doing these. So we'll see. If I trigger you, feel free to unfollow me. If you want to respond politely in the comments and keep it based on scripture, I'm all for it. But if you do name call and, attack people, you'll be blocked. So anyway, that's it. Love you guys. See you.